there were some incredible folks who invited me here and who put in a lot of work to ensure that I got here. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Jackie, Jesus, Debbie. Y'all put in work, and I'm so grateful to the FWA and the FWOCC, and to you all for being here. They invited me here, and now I want to invite you here now into this talk on enhancing cultural mindfulness in the workplace. And so as you come in and settle in, I invite you to get present. You know, just if there's anything you can do to get even 5% more comfortable, 5% more present, do that, shake that, send that text, do whatever needs to do so you can be here with us, because we got an opportunity together here today, right? And so I want you to notice what's with you, notice what's coming up for you as you come into this space. Notice what's not with you that you might need or want to call in, whether that's some hope or groundedness. And I invite you to allow whatever feelings, thoughts, sensations that might come up as we go through this talk, which is, I'm going to take you on a journey today. And so I invite you to be curious as you go through it. What are the thoughts and questions that come up? Where do you open? Where do you close? What emotions are there? And I invite you to engage, through that connection process. Connect deeply with yourself, connect with each other, connect with me. There's a unique experience we can have here today together as a group of folks who came to talk about enhancing cultural mindfulness on this day at this time. And so I'm excited to co-create with you all. To be clear, this is not an HR workshop. That title, Enhancing Cultural Mindfulness in the Workplace, might have got some of you here under some false pretenses, but I don't do HR workshops. I'm a healer, a scholar activist, and a space maker deeply committed to getting more safety and wellness for more of us. And so, sometimes folks might see that word wellness and think it's light. It's going to be self-care, yay. Wellness isn't light. It's not light. It's very, very deep, and it's connected to equity and the practice of equity that we must each engage in. And it's connected to liberation and that personal work that we all must do to get towards personal and collective liberation. And to help you all understand why this is so important and how it shapes my work, I'm going to share my journey towards learning and practicing cultural mindfulness, some of the fumbles that I had along the way, some of the lessons and practices that helped sustain me along the way, and that I hope can help you. And I gotta do it my way. I gotta do it my way. This is not gonna be your traditional presentation. This is a mix of storytelling and research and case studies, and it's Black feminist praxis. I'm presenting it authentically and artfully and intentionally. I'm so inspired by young women like Flau'jae Johnson and Angel Reese, who are the stars of the LSU championship team, who a lot of us watched last year. And I'm just in awe of the way that they show up in their full Black feminist unapologetically. It's motivation. And as I come and present in my fullness and authenticity today, I hope that it invites more of you to show up in your professional spaces, being more authentic and redefining what professionalism can be and should be, Yeah. So there's 3 parts to cultural mindfulness. The first is really deeply knowing yourself, and how your access to wellness is impacted by your cultural identities. The second is knowing the cultural identities of those you share space with and how they're able to access wellness as a result. And finally, it's about understanding power and being responsive to how power is showing up in your relationship to one another, how it's moving between you all, and then practicing equity and attending to intersectionality as a result. So let me tell y'all how I came to learn about my own identities and positioning to wellness in a deeper way. I'm 25 years old. I got a degree in English. I have just quit my boring and painful job as an insurance claims adjuster in the suburbs of Chicago in a damn near all-white organization. And I picked up and I moved to Washington, D.C. to start working at Potomac Job Corps Center. And I had the privilege of youthfulness and a family that I could count on to support me if I really, really needed them financially. And so I took a $20,000 pay cut and took the risk of working as an administrative assistant at this Job Corps center. Job Corps is considered a second chance program for 16 to 24-year-olds, people who don't make it through traditional high school, who are either kicked out or pushed out, also who have insecure housing, maybe were kicked out of their own homes. And they're there to get their high school diploma or their GED or some job skills and training. And I connected with them so well and fell in love with my work there. It felt like the right spot, the right time, and I was quickly given a promotion to move from that admin assistant role to a work-based learning coordinator, where I was responsible for helping them to get internships, apply for and secure jobs, apply to college, and just to begin their transitions to independence and out of the program. And I really learned a lot about who I was and how I was able to access and facilitate wellness through that work. Working with those beautiful young people, Caleb, Dominique, Paul. Literally, I would not be here today if it weren't for them. And so here I was, a college graduate who really had no idea that having that degree really meant anything. Now, this ignorance is despite the fact that I have now secured 2 jobs that came with insurance and relocation packages. That's how unaware I was of my privilege and my cultural positioning. But it was difficult for me to be mindful of this privilege because my dad, who hopefully won't be mad at this picture, I love this picture from my high school graduation. He used to say, or when I graduated high school, he said, "So, that's like brushing your teeth." I'm like, "Okay, Dad, all right." And when I was moving through college, it was like just graduation is an expectation, a college degree is an expectation. So he had socialized me towards education and is a big reason I have the PhD that I have now. But I had no awareness that that socialization or my degree attainment was that much of a privilege. I was not mindful that I was holding a privilege that shaped the material conditions of my life, a set of privileges that created a pathway to wellness for me and my family. That privilege became clearer and clearer when I worked with these students. I would help them identify jobs that they qualified for and saw how slim, so slim those pickings were. And I would support them in completing their applications and getting them prepped for interviews. And I saw how discrimination played out clearly over those 2.5, 3 years that I worked there. It was so routine, it was clockwork. The darker their skin, the more expansive their gender presentation, the less likely I'd be able to secure the job for them or that they'd be able to secure the job. My light skin privilege, my educational privilege, my ability to hide my queerness without sacrificing my dignity, it became undeniable in a way that it had never had before. Before, I was the Black girl facing racism. I was the working class background girl with peers who were middle and upper middle class. I was the bisexual queerdo in a sea of heterosexism and mononormativity. Those things were true, but they were only a part of the story. And so I was forced to become more mindful of how I could access wellness given my different cultural identities and positioning. So I'm coming to this awareness and I'm like, okay, got it. Let me use some of this privilege I have then. And I started to go hard. I started to go really hard as a 26-year-old navigating the world of career placement and counseling with no training or background in that work. And there was this huge anti-queer, transphobic energy on campus, fueled by leadership at the time that I was there, despite the large number of queer and trans students who were there. Sidebar, y'all know why there was a large number of queer and trans students in the Second Chance program, right? They had been kicked out of their schools, pushed out of their schools, kicked out of their homes. They were Black and therefore subject to so much unnecessary surveillance that the intersection of those oppressions landed them in this sort of last chance before jail holding space, right? So when my pitches for support spaces for these students were denied, I got creative and got funding and space to develop programs like a book club that was actually the safe space for Black, queer, and trans folks to share their feelings and to support one another and get resourced. I found ways to get those students exposure to the many dope Black and queer and trans leaders in the DC area who they could connect with or at least hold in mind as possibility models. I recruited all the extra support I could, my young self, not really knowing how to politic with these employers, but did the best I could to get folks to take note of their hiring patterns and give these students a chance to get a consistent paycheck, AKA a rent check, and food in the refrigerator, stability, independence. Think about the independence that y'all have right now. Where you lay your head at night, the food you put in your refrigerator. How did you get there? How did the wellness that you may be taking for granted get facilitated by your skin tone, by your family background, your cisgender or straight identity, your size, your beauty, your access to college or a network of employed people? Take stock. We're talking about the basics of wellness, housing, and food. Y'all remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? How is your access to safety, food, clothes, healthcare, and work shaped by your cultural background? We got to get real about this. And often when we enter conversations on culture and wellness, we jump in from this point of asking what our identities are. But then it sort of stops there. And so cultural mindfulness is about going from that question of who are you, what's your cultural background and identities, to how does that position you to wellness? And then we have to go a step further and ask ourselves and get critical about how it positions you to be able to access love, care, respect, dignity, political representation and participation, space to dream and pursue your passions, right? There's levels to this, and we have to be really real about our positioning as step one to cultural mindfulness. I was essentially being schooled in intersectionality during this time, but I had no language or education in that. Not until I left Job Corps and started my master's program at Johns Hopkins University in school counseling. I had decided that I no longer wanted to support students after they had been chewed up and spit out of their education or family systems, and I wanted to become a school counselor and try to intervene there. So I'm 27 or 28. I'm in Dr. Pilar Hernandez-Wolf's class, multicultural counseling, and I'm learning about intersectionality theory for the first freaking time. Y'all know intersectionality, right? If not, I would love to be one of the first ones to tell you about it. It's a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, but advanced by Black women in and out of academia for decades. People like Sojourner Truth, whose 1851 speech, Ain't I a Woman, named the way race and gender and class discrimination were intersecting and causing harm. And the Combahee River Collective, who gave us their powerful statement in 1977 that if you haven't read it, that's what you do when you go home. Pull it up on your phone right now so you don't forget if you haven't read that before you need it. But they stated that we need to articulate the real class situation of persons who are not merely raceless, sexless workers, but for whom racial and sexual oppression are significant determinants in their working economic lives. And so Kimberly Crenshaw's foundational work from a legal perspective helped us have a frame or a lens, a term that we could collectively use to understand these intersecting oppressions and their impact. Professor Crenshaw said intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where it interlocks and intersects. It's not simply that there's a race problem here, a gender problem here, and a class problem here, or LGBTQ problem there. Many times that framework erases what happens to people who are subject to all of these things. If y'all not familiar with her and the AAPF, the African American Policy Forum, they're doing really beautiful, beautiful, powerful work and have been for a long time. I invite you to check them out. So here I am, first year of my master's program, focused on school counseling in urban settings, urban school settings, and I'm getting these frameworks and this language that is helping me to understand everything that I had just experienced for the last several years. But gaining this framework also illuminated the second aspect of cultural mindfulness, which I had not yet fully grasped. Yes, I had understood myself and was able to use my power, recognizing power as the ability to make decisions that affect your own life and the lives of others, to move resources, right? I was able to do that. I was like feeling myself, like got it. But for collective wellness and liberation to be achieved, everyone has to be involved and bought in, right? We need to all be in relationship with one another in such a way that we share how we're actually doing, how we're actually experiencing or not experiencing wellness, how we're impacted by and impacting others. Cultural mindfulness is about attending to both power and empowerment, which is the power that we have with others, the power that's derived from learning about one another's histories and embracing each other's humanity and being in community with others who affirm and love you. We need empowerment and power to get to cultural mindfulness, to have more wellness in our workspaces, in our lives, period. And so I eventually decided to pursue my doctorate in counseling psychology at the University of Kentucky, and that's where I learned how important it is to move from simply knowing yourself or knowing and understanding power to allowing yourself to be moved in this work, to be used, to be vulnerable as you do the work, so that there can be empowerment with others. So this process it was not just about, what you do, but how you show up and how real you can be in your relationships. Let me make this clearer. The Black Lives Matter movement started in 2012. This is my first year in the PhD program. I was mad. Oh, I was so mad. I was scared. I was exhausted. Mike Brown and Sandra Bland and Trayvon Martin were me and were my loved ones. Bree Newsom was my hero. Really, all activists and organizers were. I was activated. I was afraid for my life. I was fighting for my life. All of those things were true at once. And I'm in a counseling psychology PhD program. And for those who don't know, counseling psychology is a discipline within psychology that's focused on paying attention to sociocultural context and its impact and centers social justice, right? And like many of you are right now, I'm learning alongside and working closely with people who share some of the values I share, whether the value of education, the value of healing, right? I'm working closely with them and I'm growing in relationship with them and I'm knowing I'm going to be affiliated with them for at least the next couple years, like you with a lot of the people you're sitting with. And I'm mindful that what they do each day is impacting my wellness. What I do each day is impacting their wellness. The energy that we bring each other, how we show up in those classrooms and meetings, it's felt, right? I know this. The conversations that we raise or ignore, all of it creates the container that was our lives. And like now, there was no denying the overt and incessant anti-Black racism in the world. And like many others in the movement for Black Lives, I'm asking, where are my people at? How are those around me in my workspaces moving? I was reflecting to them how I was feeling and what I was needing to be well around them. And it seemed like such a big deal to me back then, right? But really, it was no different than the check-ins and adjustments that we had been making around each other before then. We had learned one another's communication styles and the roles that we tend to take up in groups that best serve us when we collaborate. We had been learning about each other's cultural backgrounds and strengths and challenges and making those accommodations based on how one another shows up. We had been working on projects and papers and spending time with each other's families and attending events together. We had been supporting each other's wellness just in how we showed up for each other professionally. So centering the anti-Black racism that I was seeing and experiencing, or the Black liberation work that I was a part of, or needing them to be a part of, and being mindful about those realities, that also made sense. But even though it makes sense to address racism and other oppressions when they're in our face, we often avoid, particularly race, because people have racial anxieties. This was my cohort, our first year. Look at baby Della and all of us little baby psychologists. But for those of us marginalized by race, we're scared to be seen as marginalized. We're anxious about the hate that we'll face. We're anxious that folks will harm us more. And for white folks and light-skinned folks, there's a fear of being seen as harm doers, a fear of messing up, a fear of being canceled, a fear of being seen as incompetent. I see nods, honesty there, like it's real. For all of us, we're scared to try, we're scared to feel, we're scared that we'll get hurt and have to do the work of healing. So all of us are just moving through scared. But like my good friend and Psychologist Dr. Carlton Green often says, we have to do this work scared. Or as the great, great poet, writer, scholar Audre Lorde said, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid. We have to turn towards each other, and we have to turn towards our own shame and insufficiencies and growth edges and past failures and potential for future failures. We have to move towards relationship with those we are in community with despite those anxieties. That anxiety is real, and it will be there, and it should be, perhaps. We can come to accept all of that and show up for ourselves and each other anyway. I love how Adrienne Marie Brown describes this in her book, Emergent Strategy. She says, my dream is a movement with such deep trust that we move as a mermation, the way groups of starlings billow, dive, spin, and dance collectively through the air to avoid predators, and, it also seems, to pass time in the most beautiful way possible. Each creature is tuned into its neighbors, the creatures right around in the formation. There is a right relationship, a distance between them. Too close and they crash. Too far away and they can't feel the micro adaptations of the other bodies. Each creature is shifting direction, speed, and proximity based on the information of the other creature's bodies. Y'all feel that? She's got so much wisdom. Check out Emergent Strategy, Holding Change, We Will Not Cancel Us. Any of those will get you together in this work. But we have to flail as we move. And as we flail together, we learn where we can move and with who and how and for how long and where we can go together. So this piece that I was learning was like the application of cultural mindfulness, what it takes to do it in a way that's authentic and sustainable. And we all have different ways of showing up in the world. And I had to learn my own balance of personal vulnerability that didn't take away my dignity, but that was required in order to be seen so that others can practice equity with me, right? Because if I'm acting like I'm out here just doing this work for other Black people or other queer people or non-binary folks or trauma survivors and not expressing that I'm simultaneously hurt, that I'm mad, sad, exhausted, barely breathing, then I'm doing a disservice to myself and my community. I'm losing wellness. To practice cultural mindfulness, we have to be in an embodied relationship with ourselves, and that's to say we have to be in our bodies, in our knowing, in our truth, right? In our spirit, and in a deliberate practice of self-reflection, and then in discernment about how we're going to show up with others and what we will allow them to witness of us and when. It's not easy. It's not easy. It takes work to be well. And I did it scared. And when I did that relationship building and vulnerability work, I found care and love and support. I found that people showed up for me and for themselves and for the larger community that we were a part of. And I found that others didn't and couldn't because they were fighting other battles of their own, or because they had more learning and growing and healing to do in order to be able to show up, or because they weren't meant to be there, because every space isn't for everybody. But all of that was knowledge. All of that was useful, and it fueled me and helped me to be well and to find wellness during that time. These are the lessons that we take on the journey toward cultural mindfulness. This is what it means to be culturally mindful. Paying attention to how folks show up and who they are and what they do and what they need, and learning more about their context and history, and seeing how we can grow together, if that's possible, so that we can have more wellness together. Now, I told you racial anxiety is going to show up, that you're going to mess up, and that you have to do it anyway. And so now I'm going to tell you a story about how I fucked up and caused harm to vulnerable Black students. And it's a hard story to tell, but my hope is that by being transparent about one of my lowest times as a person striving towards cultural mindfulness, that you'll see that though it's hard, you're capable of moving through, and forward, and that you're still worthy, even when you're wrong, even when you're growing. And that if me, someone who's trained in counseling psychology and studying Black liberation, can flail and cause harm, then you'll know that you're going to do it too. You can start to expect it and prepare for it and get your accountability team and community together so you can move through it and keep showing up instead of using it as an excuse to back away. So I'm going to share some evidence from this time. First is an email dated January 23rd, 2018. It's sent from the top leader in the counseling center at Duke, where I was on internship at, and directed to all staff. It came the beginning of the second semester of my internship year, 1 week before Black History Month, and 2 days before a plan was due to the Student Affairs Office about what we would be offering. It reads, "It's short notice, yet I would like to see us offer programming that would bring the Black community into our space. After hours would be nice, and we could provide food. We could offer a panel on the impact of racism on mental health to validate the lived experiences on our campus. We could also offer a program about how to nurture oneself in the context of advocacy, parentheses, Della, question mark, smiley face. Other ideas?" The second piece is a flyer that I made based on a program that I conceptualized after being voluntold to come up with something. It reads, "Open and Close, Getting Close with Black Duke, a Black History Month open house at CAPS. Duke Counseling and Psychological Services invites you to join us for Open and Close. This Black History Month, we hope you will join us as we open our doors and turn CAPS into a free-flowing, conversation-filled healing space where you can choose to take part in activities that will bring us closer together and move you closer toward healing. Stations will be set up in different rooms throughout CAPS, with food and activities meant to foster connection and healing with Black Duke, including African diasporic and multiracial Duke community members. You can take in a Black Lives Matter meditation in our massage room, speak the truth of your experience in our group room, meet our diverse staff who have been doing incredible healing work with Black Duke, or simply mingle and roam on your own. Come to our open house and get close with us." This is an email that came from that same top leader on Wednesday, January 31st, the day after the flyer was posted on campus, and this email was sent to all staff. It reads, "Dear all, I want to share with everyone that CAPS has received significant critical feedback about our flyer for the open house during Black History Month. Although many staff and students have expressed concern, I think this quote from a student summarizes the concerns best. The quote from the student reads, "The event, although well-intentioned, is flawed and off-putting. The images of food are stereotypical and slightly offensive, as that's not even traditional for Black History Month. The language is also confusing and can be misinterpreted. Example, open and close. It seems like it's trying to forge an unnatural connection and pushing about stereotypes that Black Duke is trying to dismantle. The term Black Duke itself has been created by students, and it feels uncomfortable coming from an administrative perspective or even being made real by being put on a poster." The senior leader continues, "As we know, intention becomes unimportant when we consider impact, especially when we hurt others and they experience the burden of having to educate us. I deeply regret the impact, and I have been humbled by the feedback. I sat in my office late tonight considering the double bind of this work and cried. And there is more work to do. I have reached out to the Graduate School of the Mary Lou and the CMA to address our misguided intention and have shared with them a new flyer for their consideration. See attached. Thanks, Stella. Marvis has reached out to student leaders he knows, and I encourage you all to do the same with those you know. If you hear additional feedback, please let me know. Beth." you see here is the letter that I drafted on February 5th, 2018, titled A Message for the Black Students, Staff, Faculty, and Community Members Exposed to the Open and Close Flyer. You deserved better. You face microaggressions and overt discrimination every day navigating this university. You bear a weight that is seldom named, is isolating, and is constant. As a Black student pursuing her PhD at a different primarily white institution, I know the pain that comes from being minimized or rendered invisible by professors and peers on the daily. I know the work that it takes when determining how to show up with your Blackness while striving to be respected as a whole person and scholar on campus. I know what it is to be tokenized, used, and stereotyped. Because I know these things so intimately, I am holding a massive amount of pain and shame as I own my complicity in contributing to your continued hurt here at Duke. I am a psychology intern working at CAPS this year, and I conceptualized the open and close event and created the flyer that was microaggressive and discriminatory to you. You deserved so much better from me. I failed you, I hurt you, and I am deeply sorry. You deserve a place where you can receive healing and care without having to worry about if you are only going to be seen as one version of Black, or if your problems are going to be fully heard and understood. You deserve to not have to question whether or not you can access CAPS, or if there are people at CAPS who care and who can empathize with and help you heal and succeed at Duke. I failed to recognize the position that I am in as an agent of Duke CAPS when I created that flyer. You deserved intentionality and thoughtfulness, and what you got was another injury. And it was more than just a microaggression, because it was something that likely left many of you feeling unsafe at Duke. It likely left many of you feeling like you will not be able to access a resource, CAPS, that is really critical for students in general, let alone Black students navigating an elite, primarily white institution. I know you did not just feel the hurt that came from seeing the flyer, but that I contributed to putting a barrier between you and the culturally mindful mental health services that you deserve and that exist at CAPS. You deserve for your own people, a Black person, a student at a primarily white institution, and for some of you, your counselor, to not be the people contributing to your pain. I created something quickly, poorly, and without reflection on my role as a part of a system. Now that I am in this position of power that is tied to access to mental health care, I have to understand the role that I am in, be more attuned to context and history, and work conscientiously to use my position to remove, not create, barriers to wellness. I created something without thinking about the history of Duke, the unique pressures and racist experiences that shape so much of your experience here, or the impact that my wording and image choices would have on you. It was unacceptable. My responsibility is to promote wellness and healing, and in this action, I was insensitive and hurtful. The lesson I learned was at your expense, and that is not okay. I normally claim that I'm quote unquote unapologetically Black, but today, this Black woman who occupies a position of privilege at the university is sincerely apologetic. I am too smart to have been that dumb. I am too familiar with being harmed to have been that harmful. I am too empowered in this position to have been that careless and disempowering with my own people in this space. There is no excuse for my actions. I apologize for their impact on you. You deserve to be heard. I want to make myself available to hear your reactions, to apologize personally, and to make amends for my actions. I have reserved blank time and blank room on this date and will be available to listen and talk about what happened, where I went wrong, and where we go from here. If you prefer, I'm also accessible via email and invite your feedback. Respectfully. Now, I described so much of my process in that letter, and I hope you can draw out some takeaways about the importance of locating yourself, about taking accountability, about being honest with yourself and others about the wrong you have done and how you are learning in the aftermath of that and how you are taking account in the aftermath of that. But what I would highlight here is another piece that I was reflecting on during this time. I learned some things about myself. Going through this experience and being forced to face myself honestly helped me become mindful of how I'm driven by a desire to deliver and to show up and show out, even when I know I'm stretched way beyond my capacity. Really, it was an internalized anti-Blackness that was operating to where even though I knew that ask that the director made of me was tokenizing and was pushing me to my limits at the time, I knew all that. But there's this desire within me to still prove that I could do it all. And so I moved urgently and carelessly. And so now I know this about myself. And I know deeply the consequences of responding to that urge to prove to white leadership that I can do something. I know now that when I'm not well and when I'm pressured, then I have a tendency to go it alone. I have a tendency to tuck in and do it myself, go in to show and prove. And now I can be accountable to that knowing. If I was more mindful, then I would have checked the flyer out with my team. Not those staff members who did approve it, but the team of Black folks who I've been organizing with for years. If I was really being mindful, then it wouldn't have been something that I was doing late at night on my own, but I'd be working at a time when I do my best work, right? I would have remembered that even though I can be successful when I'm not well, that success isn't an accurate measure of wellness. Not personal wellness nor collective wellness. It's not. Success is not an accurate measure of wellness. No. Right relationship, that's an accurate measure of wellness. Trust is a more accurate measure of wellness. Capacity is a more accurate measure of wellness. Good pace is a more accurate measure of wellness. Boundaries are an accurate measure of wellness. Rest, vulnerability, equity, those are more accurate measures of wellness, you see? And so this felt like the final and most critical piece really in my journey towards understanding cultural mindfulness. Fumbling and taking accountability, those are important lessons. Working in community with trusted others, those are important components to practicing cultural mindfulness. Practicing self-reflection and understanding how you're continuing to internalize different isms as you do this work, that's critical. And so now as I pivot and as I prepare to close this out, I want to share just a couple quick stories about the work I've been doing as a wellness, equity, and liberation consultant, helping others to get to workplace wellness. So the NSF Center for Sustainable Nanotechnology is one of the first groups that I partnered with when I started my consulting practice. Some of their leadership had attended Academics for Black Survival and Wellness, the initiative that I had co-developed with Dr. Paris Jean and a team of incredible scholar activists and healers, including Alex Colson, who's here today. But from participating in that training program and healing experience, they started to develop a relationship with me, some of the leaders of that center. And they shared some of their goals and growth areas when it came to practicing inclusion and increasing diversity and belongingness. And we began to develop an approach for how we might begin to collaborate towards enhancing wellness, equity, and liberation at their center. And what helped when we started was that they had already done some homework on their own, including participating in Academics for Black Survival and Wellness, and that helped them to understand the value in focusing on wellness, equity, and liberation, and in using Black feminist approaches. And they had already begun to do some interrogation on their own about what would facilitate or hinder their ability to follow Black femme leadership and direction. And so even though I know there is a risk of experiencing harm for those of us who hold marginalized identities and do this type of work in majority white spaces, especially working within systems that are government funded or historically white. But the work that they had done leading up to this point allowed me to trust them more, to trust that time and other resources would be allocated for the work, and to trust that impact could be made through this collaboration. And it created an openness in me regarding the possibilities that could be made real, both at a relational and collective level. And I invite you to think about that. Before you begin some of this work and start having the conversations to move towards more cultural mindfulness at work, what's the work you need to do on your own and that you can be doing on your own privately or in your home spaces before you come beginning to have some of these conversations that I'm talking about, so that there can be more trust as you start. It's important for most of us to feel respected at work, and I was able to trust that I would be. And that helped me bring my highest self to the work, to the tasks, and to the relationships in front of me. I wonder how you or your colleagues work to make one another feel respected. It helped me to approach the work with more presence, more mindfulness, and it's such a beautiful cycle, or it can be, when we are mutually striving toward it. And so I started working with them with a focus on transparency about my background and my approaches to the work, my values and dreams, allowing those who didn't know me to make an informed and autonomous choice about moving forward in the work. I firmly believe that autonomy is a core component of all relationships that are wellness enhancing. And so I work to establish trust. How can you do that? I showed them my receipts. I told them about the strengths and challenges of working with me. How can you do that? And I obtained their consent to do this wellness, equity, and liberation work with them. I know some of your colleagues want it, and if you're here, I imagine you want it. And what's the consent process that'll allow for y'all to begin deepening into that work and relationship? From there, I was laying a foundation, and I think it's important for us to have shared language and understanding about power and how it's shaping the flow of wellness in our spaces, and so we did some of that work together. Knowing yourself is a measure of wellness. Because when you don't know who you are, you don't know how you're biased and discriminatory towards people who don't hold the same privilege or positioning, and not knowing creates a distance between you and them. But knowing who you are enhances wellness. It creates groundedness, more connection to yourself, more connection to others. It helps you know what you have to give because you're well. It helps you know what you need in order to be well. So we did all of that. And then in our second year, with that foundation laid, then we're getting into the deep work. It was a lot of holding and stretching during this time. Because in the first year, we found out who was hurting and why. And so in year 2, we're creating containers to hold them, being accountable to what we know about how people are hurting. I'm sure some people here have told you how they're hurting in their workplace. What is needed for you to create a container to hold them? And in year 1, we deepened our understanding of how power was moving and impacting wellness. And so we created trainings and interventions in years 2, focused on supporting those folks to stretch their muscles and practice using their power and resources in more equitable ways. And toward the end of that second year, and now in our third year especially, we're really stretching not just inward, but outward. We're asking and answering questions of how we can use our privilege as a multi-university STEM organization with a couple of years experience working together to increase wellness and equity and liberation, to support others. And how can we have more joy as we do it? So we're doing that work internally and with those in our workspaces, and then we're taking an equity approach and reaching out to others who deserve access to the wellness that a STEM pathway affords, and supporting them in some really creative ways. And then we're just constantly reflecting on what's working and why and where and for who, and adapting and continuously trying to find more joy as we do this work together. And I know this kind of flow can be present here. I know it can, here in your classrooms, here in your labs, here in your department, here in your meetings, here on your research teams. You can know yourself and your access to or distance from wellness. You can be real about that with yourself and others, which was step 1 of cultural mindfulness. You can learn who you're sharing space with and how wellness has been accessible or inaccessible to them, step 2 of cultural mindfulness. And you can stay attuned to how power is operating in your relationship and the spaces you share, and you can be accountable to that. Step 3 of cultural mindfulness. Cultural mindfulness is critical, y'all. It can truly lead to a more inclusive and equitable environment, one where there's more wellness for more of us. We just have to remember to be real, to be gentle, to be compassionate as we do this work. I've had to. You have to remember that you have to work at it, that you have to learn and stretch yourself in new ways. It takes work. It's a new curriculum in many ways, this interpersonal work that we're not taught to do, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to take accountability. Who taught you that? What classes did you take on that? Right? But there are, maybe not classes, there are some classes, but there are many pathways to get there. I hope you follow some of these people whose names I've mentioned today. They've got some great practices in this work. We have to be real, gentle, compassionate, authentic, and present. And when we do, if we do, we'll have less of that racial anxiety. We'll have more community. We'll have more connection to ourselves and to others. You'll probably find that the quality of your work is better, that the time you spend on your teams is more enjoyable. You'll probably have a deeper sense of pride, proud of yourself. Those coming behind you will be more likely to be proud of you for the work that you're doing. Think about it. What would it feel like? How might your workday or study feel different if you were able to really trust that those you are sharing space with are really doing the work of trying to enhance or practice cultural mindfulness, and that you could be safe to do so too? Imagine that. I know I find myself bracing a lot less. I find my defenses down. I find my heart more open. I find my creativity up. I find more ease. Because I only share space now. I only work with folks who are doing this work and willing to do this work. And that's how that's the personal and collective liberation work that I'm in now, and I feel the difference. And I want that for you. I want that for each of you. This is the world that I want to co-create with you all, and I hope you'll commit to doing this world-building, world-changing work with me. We are all worthy of wellness, and I hope we can get to it together. And I have to close this talk by thanking those young, mostly Black folks who helped plant the seeds of cultural mindfulness for me, who taught me to show up, and for whom I dedicate this. Caleb, Paul, Sarah, everyone at Potomac Job Corps Center and at Friendship Academy in Baltimore, where I worked as a school counselor, who showed me so much. And I also want to thank my incredible storytelling coach and love, Ty Malik Coleman of Ty Malik Presents, for helping me craft these truths for you today. I hope you'll connect with me in ways that feel supportive to you. My website's there. Please whip out that phone and follow me on Instagram. And the Wells Healing Center is a nonprofit healing center, and we provide training to folks who want to be healers, scholar, activists. And we also provide weekly free group counseling to Black grad students across this country. So there's a group running now for Black grad students broadly, and a group running right now for trans Black grad students. And these groups are led by counseling psychologists. And it's totally free for the participants. And I also equitably pay the facilitators. And so if you want to support that work, you can do so by following that QR code. Thank you for listening and holding some of my truths with me today. I'm wishing you wellness. Thank you. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, thank you. Oh, that was very generous of you. Thank you. We can have a conversation now. So I invite folks to come to the mic, and you can share comments, you can ask questions, and we'll see what comes up. In the beginning, I asked you to be in tune with your bodies, your thoughts, your emotions. You can reflect on that. Whatever's present. Hi.
My name's Michelle. I'm academic advisor of engineering. Thank you for this. I had a colleague who really did make me feel hurt and seen. He got let go really quickly because he was holding to his own boundaries and what he wanted from his office and from his leadership. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of safety as far as that's concerned, and I'm not sure how to navigate that yet. I'm always pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Transparent. This is me. I have skulls all over my office. Because that's a part of who I am, who I want to share my realism of it. I talk to the students, with the students, not at them. I want that camaraderie and that bond with them, but it feels like every time I start to feel comfortable in that space, unfortunately leadership says, no, that's not professional. Whose version of professional?
Whose version of professional?
We're not talking about the old stuffy white guys from back in the day that, hold everybody up on pedestals because they were academics, and I don't think that's right or fair, but I don't know quite how to navigate it. So thank you for this. Thank you for some of this information. Help me kind of get out of my own head sometimes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Oof. That share has me wondering, and I wonder for y'all, like, where the black and brown folks at? If they were in your department, in your classroom last semester, last year, 4 years ago, where'd they go? What happened? Where are y'all talking about that at? Where are y'all acting on that at? What power do you have given who you are as a student, as a staff member, as faculty, as an admin to do something about that push out that is constantly happening? Or are we just watching it? Next one comes in, next one goes out. I think if you're here and you're asking yourself those questions, I hope that you can connect with other folks here. I know that's the way that most change happens, is by building beautiful relationships with others who are asking the same questions, who are mindful about who's here and who's not here and why, and willing to push past the discomfort and willing to strategize around what the barriers that you can expect from leadership, and how to move through the unexpected ones that are going to come, and persisting forward. That's what comes to me.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Broccoli, and thank you, Dr. Mosley, for that. I think one of the things that's coming up for me is your apology. And I've received a lot of hurt, tons of hurt. Don't even have enough pages or time. But the authenticity and sincerity and accountability that was in the apology that you put, I could take that kind of hurt any day. And I think that's the thing that's resonating with me, is because even in the session this morning, I think one of the comments was that there's so much fear of doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I think we can do the wrong thing,
yes.
right? People can do the wrong thing. It's being accountable when you do the wrong thing that can make us all resilient and keep moving. And so if I ever had an apology as sincere, my follow was like, did the students come and talk to you? Like, how did they respond to that? Because if I saw that, I wouldn't even have the same hurt, because I would know that underneath all of that was still care for me. And so I just hope that more people feel empowered to fail and be open about it. So that was what was sitting with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coley. Yeah, that was hard. That was hard. That is still hard. I don't know, the takeaway or the thought that I'm having right now is about the defensiveness that comes up and how hard it is to touch our shame. I was so ashamed. Oh my God. I was so ashamed. And in the past, before this time, when shame came up for me, I would try to run away from it. I would try to pack it away. I would try to avoid it in whatever way I could. And that's taken many different shapes and forms. But being with it, it's so powerful. It's so necessary. It's what's required, and it's what people deserve. What do y'all do with y'all shame? What's the shame that you're currently holding when it comes to how you show up in cross-racial relationships or for or with Black people particularly? What have you stuffed away that you should pull out and look at? You're strong enough to do that. We deserve for you to do that. And I mentioned this earlier, but I highly recommend Mia Mingus. If you're new to doing accountability work, has got some beautiful words and strategies around moving towards accountability. Thinking about transformative justice can help you get closer to accountability. Watching some videos or listen to some talks. This is just like a skill we have to learn, that we can take the time to learn. And at the end of it, there's more wholeness, there's more clarity. The work that I do and have done after that obviously is strengthened because of my ability to face where I messed up. So it's worth it, y'all. Hi.
Hello, I'm Dr. Yolanda Rodriguez, a little short for the microphone. But I'm height challenged, thank you. First off, I really want to thank you, person to person, heart to heart, for bringing your vulnerability here and allowing us to share that. And I stand in support, of that, being vulnerable and authentic and real. And that's something that I've spoken about for many, already going on 20 years publicly in different spaces. Yes. And one of the things I usually talk about is knowing who you are, because once you stand in your truth, you're invincible. However, sometimes
Dun, dun, dun.
We being who we are and just walking in the room, making people feel uncomfortable, and with you have been so open and authentic with your apology, it brought to mind how many times that we, people of color, are victimized and, for just being who we are. And again, not just the intersectionality of it, but the fact that we are the minority and the token, and then we become the token victim as well, or re-victimized by the mere fact of what we look like. I'm sure you've experienced that. And I don't know if you've had a moment or opportunity to distill that into some words of wisdom for us that face that every day. I'd love to hear a different perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you've been doing for 20 plus years to advocate for more authenticity. We need that. Thank you for that. For me, I don't know if I have, this is wisdom. They hate me anyway. They hate me anyway. They hate me anyway. Y'all hate me anyway, so you gonna get it. That's like, it's hard, and it's like it's a shield maybe right now, but if I speak my truth, you're not gonna like it. If I don't speak my truth, you're still not gonna like it, and I'm gonna not have my dignity and wholeness. And so it's not the best compass. There's still a lot of pain in that, right? And I'm not going to deny that, like having that, you're going to hate me anyway, so I'm going to be strong and just be in my truth and be authentic is not without pain, but I think it feels better than silencing myself. Hi.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So we've never met. I'm also a psychologist, but I'm a huge fan of yours, Della. My name is Eleanor Seaton. And you did a virtual panel at some point. I don't know if it was Division 35 or 45, But you said something that I now say to people, and I just want to publicly thank you for saying that and let you know that I use your words. I don't remember what the panel was about. Again, I think it was Division 35. In APA, we have like a gazillion divisions, and so this is one of them. And it was around this, race-related equity. And you said, we need to stop because we're moving at the speed of white supremacy and we need to slow down. And I want you to know that I say that. And like you, I know people don't like me. I really don't care. I'm from the south side of Chicago.
Yes.
If anybody has smoke, I'm here for that.
That's right.
Anyway, but I say that because I think you brought the universe to a standstill when you said that. I was at my computer like, I got to stand up in my own house and be like, well, damn, sorry for cursing.
You don't have to be sorry for cursing.
But I don't want you to know that that was powerful, and it moved me, and I use it, and I say it. And other people respond to that, like we are moving at the speed of white supremacy, and we need to slow down.
Yes.
And I just want to publicly give you your flowers, because you
you.
deserve it. Thank you for this talk. Thank you for the work you're doing, and just keep doing it. And I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. You just filled me. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for reflecting that. Yeah, that huge fumble, I was moving at the speed of whiteness. I was moving at the speed of whiteness, and that don't serve none of us but whiteness. We gotta stop. We gotta slow down. We gotta be in relationship. We gotta give flowers to people. We gotta come up and heart to heart with people, right? That's the speed. That's the measure of wellness. Thank you. It's okay if there's no more. I want nothing forced, but if there's any comments, questions, feels, things that want to be named, there's space for it. Okay. Thank you so much.